Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started this morning. Happy New Year and welcome. My name is Joaquin Esquivel. I'm chair of the State Water Board. Today is Tuesday, January 21st, and it is 9:30, and I would like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to begin by introducing fellow board members. To my left is Vice Chair Doreen Diadamo. To her left is Board Member Sean McGuire. To my right, Board Member Tam Doduk, and to her right, Board Member Laurel Firestone. Assisting us today at the executive table is Michael Woffler, our Chief Counsel, Eileen Sobek, our Executive Director, Jonathan Bishop, Chief Deputy Director. The clerk of the board is Janine Townsend, and assisting to her today is Courtney Tyler. Begin by quickly going over emergency evacuation procedures. Please look around and identify the two exits closest to you. In the event of a fire alarm, we're required to gather up our valuables and evacuate this room immediately. We're to evacuate to Cesar Chavez Park, which is across the street. Please obey all traffic signals and be careful when crossing the street. I'll also let you know that this meeting is being webcast and recorded, so please speak into the microphone when you come up. And last but most importantly, please do turn off all your cell phones or noise-making devices. You have to turn them off, just turn off their noise-making function, I suppose. We'll begin today with actually a presentation of the Superior Accomplishment Award. We'd like to call up Darren Polhamus to present the award to one of our staff members.
Thank you so much. It's a good way to start the first board meeting of the year, I think. So Hung, if you would come up here. This award's for Hung Bowie. Yes, when you come up here, you have to come up and stand in front of everybody. So let me tell a little story. As you know, we use SWRCB as our data system. It's a US EPA database given to us. It works really good for US EPA and sort of okay for us. But there's one individual, Hung, who has taken parts of that, and there's a California Drinking Water Watch component that also comes, but it doesn't necessarily meet all our needs, and staff always have a huge desire for data. As you know, we're always collecting data and trying to use it effectively, and so this award goes to Hung, who has done an incredible job as a one-man force to be reckoned with when it comes to putting together, modifying Drinking Water Watch, creating tools that staff could use so that we could actually use a database as a staff tool rather than just a reporting tool. I know that seems simple to state, but it's really a huge deal going forward. So my appreciation is this all started before I took over, so I just got to see the benefits from it. We have a lot of future to go forward, and Hung's work has paved the way for that dramatically. And I can't thank him enough. I really don't want to know how many hours he spent programming and pulling stuff together, but he really did step into a need there, filled it fabulously, and I can't really sing his praises enough. So with that, thank you, Hung, so much for doing that for the division, for the people of California. It's been a big effort, and we really do appreciate it. Thank you.
I agree, Darren. A very nice way to start the new year, and really appreciate the contributions, Hung. Next, I'd like to move on to public forum, which any member of the public may address and ask questions of the board relating to any matter. And we have one card from Barry Nelson. Mr. Nelson, good morning. You've requested 5 minutes, and you've been given 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Esquivel and board members. Barry Nelson with the Golden State Salmon Association. Who's that on? I'll just pull it up. I'm here today to present a letter from 29, not just organizations, but a tribal signature, the Winnemem-Wintu tribe, many nonprofits, and members of the fishing industry. So these are interests representing environmental groups, fishing organizations, tribal interests, and environmental justice interests. And it's a recommendation, and I have copies of the letter for you, from all of those interests, recommending that the board begin as aggressively, as rapidly as possible to finalize and implement comprehensive standards for the Bay Delta system. Last November, you'll recall, December of 2018, you finalized standards on the San Joaquin side. Since then, the board has spent an enormous amount of time analyzing, working with the voluntary agreement process. From our perspective, it's clear at this point that, at least at this point, the package that is on the table does not have adequate assets to be adequate, and there's no prospect at this point for an adequate package. The evidence for the need for new comprehensive flow standards for the Bay Delta estuary is abundantly clear. You know that record from the disastrous state of fisheries, species that are truly on the brink of extinction, 2 years of shutdown in 2008, 2009 for the industry I represent, toxic algae outbreaks. The evidence is abundantly clear. I would note on behalf of the fishing community that we fish for fall run, late fall run Chinook salmon. Those are the species we target. You're the only agency that has the authority to require flow standards to protect our industry. They're not listed under the Endangered Species Act. You're the only agency that has the authority, the ability to do that. And the need to do that is clear. I want to just spend a moment reviewing the timeline since we saw standards adopted last. Those standards were negotiated in 94, adopted in 95. That's now 25 years ago. The triennial review of those standards was begun in 2008. 2009, the Delta Reform Act was passed. 2010, the board adopted your flow criteria report pursuant to that legislation. 2014, in the Delta Stewardship Council's target for completing that process was 2014. In 2015, Secretary Laird came to the board, wrote you a letter, and said that he anticipated voluntary agreements to be done by the end of 2016. It's easy to forget this timeline, how long it has been. In 2018, the board was told that there would be final voluntary agreements by March. That time has come and gone. But most importantly, what's happened since you acted in December of 2018 is the wholesale abandonment of endangered species protections in the Delta by the federal government, dramatically weakening existing protections. We're not moving towards stronger protections outside of this process. The federal agencies are moving towards dramatically weakening protections. The board has encouraged voluntary agreements, has been patient for voluntary agreements. It's time to move forward. So we urge you to agendize this issue as rapidly as possible and to direct your staff to move forward as rapidly as possible to finalize both the adoption and implementation of comprehensive Bay Delta flow standards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nelson.
I'm sorry, can I ask, what do you mean by agendize this item?
Oh, it's in order for the board to move forward, in our discussions, our assumption was that the board would have some sort of a presentation about where things stand and a discussion about where things stand and a discussion about the appropriate timeline for moving forward. Perhaps, and obviously at some point, maybe that's agendizing it for a discussion of the process. Maybe it's simply agendizing it to begin the process of the individual pieces of that process. At some point, that means agendizing that process and beginning it in a more formal way, in a way that isn't anticipating that voluntary agreements are around the corner, as we've been hearing for now a decade. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nelson, for your time, attention, and the letter. Next, we'll move on to consideration of the board minutes from December 18, and I'll entertain a motion.
I'll so move adoption of the minutes.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Joaquin? Yes.
And I am with abstaining because I was not at the board meeting. Yes. Thank you. And the motion carries. And so the board meeting minutes are adopted. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to uncontested items, items number 2 through 4. If there are any of the items, and I know and appreciate and thank board staff's great work on them, but if there are any of the items that the board members would like to hear, we can pull them out. Otherwise, I can entertain them as a block of uncontested items.
Are there any comment cards for any of the items?
No, there are not.
I will move for adoption of all those items.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carries, and items 2 through 4 are adopted. Thank you again to staff for their work on them. And with, thank you, staff. And with that, we are now on board member reports. Item number 5. And so I will,
Board member McGuire and I got to do a really fantastic tour with the Delta Mendota Water Authority last week, and it was extremely helpful for me to understand that part of the valley and our very engineered water system, and got to see some of the refuges, which I hadn't seen before, and just really appreciated the time that those folks gave to us. And we had our first advisory group meeting for what we're calling the Safer Drinking Water Program, which is just sort of the Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Fund, plus more comprehensively also all of our drinking water funding and implementation and needs assessment and all of those efforts. And I found it extremely helpful. I really appreciate staff's time putting into it, and I thought the group was really exceptional. A really good, diverse group, and I really appreciate that time and look forward to more of those. I think we're continuing to learn and improve in that process, but it's an exciting way to kick that off at the new year. And I think there was also an effort last week to start talking more about consolidation and regionalization in terms of, multiple communities looking at how to develop drinking water solutions. And so I think that there is a lot of interest from a lot of stakeholders in making sure that we're successful as a state in moving forward sustainable solutions for safe and affordable drinking water. And those are the main things I have. Thanks.
Didn't want to mention the Safer Advisory Group meeting? Oh, you did, sorry. My mind was floating, obviously. I will just mention one thing. Board Member McGuire and I met with some of the stakeholders who were involved in developing the California QMS proposal for the ELAP regulations. I think it was a good discussion. Staff was there, Darren and his staff as well. I know that we want to do a follow-up meeting with staff to discuss what we heard and to discuss next steps, but I thought it was a very productive meeting. And I certainly got a better understanding of where they're coming from and what they're proposing. I wish we could have delved a little bit more into the actual differences between the two proposals, especially where the California QMS removed components that were in the TNI. But I think we'll continue to have that discussion with staff, and I expect, at least I for one, will probably have another discussion with the stakeholders. But it was very productive.
I'll go ahead and go. I'll start from our last board meeting, which I wasn't in attendance for, and it was because I was part of a roundtable that the Resources Agency Secretary Crowfoot had pulled together regarding cutting green tape insofar as helping, if we really are serious about conservation, environmental restoration to the scale and scope that we know we need to see across the landscape, it's going to require the permitting agencies and all the state agencies and external stakeholders that are part of that enterprise, if you will, to discuss and think about how do we do restoration at scale. What is perhaps challenges on the permitting side? What are the things that we could perhaps better coordinate around to bring down the cost of some of that work? And so it was a nice, engaging, and beginning discussion around how we might be able to do some of that work. And I think there are future discussions that are scheduled, and we look forward to being part of those. After that was the long break, and so it was a nice opportunity to be in Brookings, South Dakota, not in California, with my partner's family.
Did I hear that right?
Yeah, with my partner's family, who, interestingly, obviously, water quality challenges there as well, not unlike some of the ones that we face sometimes, groundwater challenges, not in quantity, but certainly quality sometimes. So anyway, it was a nice visit out there. The only other thing I would necessarily flag, I think, is the Safer Drinking Water Advisory Group meeting. Like Laurel, I was able to attend for a time, and was really impressed by the turnout and the amount of interest in the implementation of the Safe and Affordable Fund, but then also what does it mean for our existing authorities, Office of Sustainable Water Solutions, our consolidation authorities, and so was really pleased to see such great participation from the advisory committee members themselves, but then also from other stakeholders and members of the public, both there in person, but then also through the webcast. So we look forward to continue to have those very public-facing check-ins as we develop the program, particularly in this first year because of just the unique nature of the opportunity and the real fortune that we have to be able to figure out how to make best use of what we know what is a limited pot and a tremendous amount of need out in the communities. Other than that, I think it kind of covers at least what has been a pretty busy month, but not too many public-facing engagements. So.
Okay, so I attended in December the Region 1's board meeting, and of interest, I think, to all of us is that they had an information item on the 303D listing, and because of the challenges with the deadline, we're going to be handling that for them, but it came up as an information item so that they could still talk through the issues and have an opportunity for stakeholder input. I shared this with our chair and executive director that Region 1 really does not want this to happen again. So I think that they're really going to be focused in the future of being able to meet the time frame. It was a very good discussion, full-blown discussion about the whole 303D listing process. And then board members and the public expressed concern with doing it this way, having the official action taken at the state board level. So my sense is that they're going to do everything that they can to move forward with this so that they can adopt in the future. I participated, there was a 3-day process that Region 5 had. I'm glad to see Mr. Polhemus here because this is in follow-up to our irrigated lands order that we adopted on East San Joaquin, specifically related to surface water monitoring. Recall that the way we handled it in our order was to request that the regional board, or to direct the regional board, develop an expert panel in order to better assess the regional monitoring program that they have in East San Joaquin. And so day one was regional board, so they do have an expert panel, and this was the expert panel's convening. So day one was understanding the order, hearing from staff, and then hearing from stakeholders, which was a very good discussion. And then day two was a field trip. And so this is my neck of the woods, and it's always interesting when you get out into the field, even where you're from, and you learn things. And just the difference between surface water and the ability to collect samples on the west side versus the east side of the San Joaquin River. So I learned a lot. It was well attended. There were stakeholders from the agricultural community and from the NGO community, and it was a lot of really good questions. And then the third day I missed, where they were to have deliberations in private and then reconvene for a more open discussion. And so I look forward to seeing the report. Brianna St. Pierre was there from our staff, and so it's good that we had participation as well. And then last week I spoke at Blue Diamond's leadership conference and talked about the Bay Delta Plan, irrigated lands, safe drinking water. It was a really good discussion. And then I also attended a reception a reception for SWRCB, and I was just excited that their new president is a good friend of mine, Darren McDaniels, who used to be a staffer for Congressman Denham, and he left that post years ago to run for a seat on the Merced County Board of Supervisors. And it's just nice to see people advancing. I think he's been a very constructive force in Merced County, and know that he will also be on the board. And then lastly, I just wanted to call out that I'm looking for here a little copy of a blog on that American Rivers project that I went to. I know board member McGuire did it as well. I don't know if anybody else did, but this was rearranging some of the cobble in the American River for salmon spawning. And they were seeing that even in a short period of time, a good result. And so I'm looking here for the news article, and I'm not able to find it. There we go. And so a big surge in the numbers, and I don't remember what the numbers were, but it was a positive result in a very short period of time. So.
Great. So I think you covered most of the things that I did over the last several weeks. I was able to also attend the SWRCB installation of officers reception. And for me, it's just a reminder of the importance of working with county and local governments and how we need to continue to partner with them, as so many of the issues that we're trying to address, we share in common, in that they all touch water. And so I think it's important to continue those types of relationships going forward. And then on the tour with San Luis Delta Mendota Water Authority, I also wanted to mention we had the opportunity to go see the intertie between the Delta Mendota Canal and the California Water Aqueduct. And for me, that just highlights the opportunity that we have with constructed infrastructure to think creatively, and that these facilities were built in the 1960s, and before then, 1950s. And it took up until 10 years ago, frankly, to implement a solution to find ways to share and exchange water amongst partners. And I think in this world that we live in now, and just reflecting on the water resilience portfolio and what's in there, we need to continue to look for those types of creative solutions to use the infrastructure that we have to better leverage it. So those are the things I wanted to flag. Thanks.
Thank you, board members. With that, we'll move on to item number 6, our executive director's report. Ms. Sobek, is there anything you'd like to particularly discuss or highlight for us within the report?
No, I just wanted to mention, based on your reports about the advisory committee meeting, that the next advisory committee meeting is going to be in Fresno. We are trying to move them around the state. We are video broadcasting them, so people can watch no matter where they are. But I think we realize it is important to get around the state. So I just wanted to make that clear. And I don't think we have a date yet. I'm not sure, and I think that we are planning to have an evening session as well, so that we are mindful that it's sometimes difficult for people to participate during the workday. So we will try to work on that, especially during this first year when we really want to get as much input as we can into the program.
Thank you. That brings us to item number
I have
7.
a comment, actually.
By all
on the
means, yes, board
Executive Director's report. So thank you for sending it. I did have a chance to look through, and there's just one area I wanted to maybe ask for a little bit more information in future reports, and that is specifically as it relates to the Office of Research, Planning, and Performance. I took a look, and in this report, there's no real information with regard to making conservation a way of life, the water loss control requirements, climate change work, and it may be that it was just this month, and I didn't go back and look at previous reports, but I know there were a number of, for example, on the water loss control, there were a number of stakeholder meetings that occurred in December, and some other, close the comment period, some other things that are happening. There's a lot going on in that area right now. I think it's important that we highlight the activities that the board is undertaking. And so I just ask that, this section of the report, as well as the priorities list, also just reflect kind of current anticipated milestones for those programs as we move forward.
Great, happy to do there, and I do that, and I think the head of the office is here, so he's heard that directly, so that's an efficient way to get the message out. Thank you.
I was also just going to mention that I found out that the reason there wasn't a Region 5 irrigated lands update before when I made comments about that is because they switch it off. So every other executive office report is just Region 5 because it's so big around irrigated lands. And then it alternates back and forth. So just thought I'd clarify that because that was news to me and appreciated. So thanks.
Great, thank you for both of those flags and comments. And so that brings us to item number 7. I'll go ahead and say we'll take a 30-minute break before we get into item number 7. And for item number 7, we'll go ahead and retire to conference room, is it 2:30?
Yes, it's conference room 230, which is open to the public.
Yes, and so folks can join us back there at 10:30 here, and then Michael will come in to close out the board meeting.
Right, and I just want to clarify for the record that there will be no closed session today. So item 7 will be the board's last item for the day.
Great. Happy New Year, everyone. Relatively light meeting for the first of the new year. I'll think back to these days and imagine how wonderful it is as the year progresses. So thank you, everyone. And we'll meet back at 10:30 in conference room 230. Thank you. you.